Raheem Kassam. And the great Matt Schlapp. So Matt and I, so Matt, we were talking off stage, and you're asking me, should we have another CPAC in Australia? And what was your response?
I don't know. I kind of feel like we should ask everyone here.
Well, let's ask him. Should we have another CPAC in Australia?
Should we have another one next week?
So you're happy, Matt?
Yeah, I have to say, and we've talked about it throughout the last, I think we're clocking how many hours we've been here, but it is just such a special moment, I find, when I talk to so many of you in the hallway and everything else. We're all fighting the same dragons. It's the same problems. People with different names and maybe different accents. But it's the same issue when I walked down to the street and saw what those knuckleheads were doing down on the street. And I quickly made sure none of my daughters were there, by the way, so that was good. And by the way, as a father of 5, I'm into, people say, well, kids might go their own way. I was like, well, in my household, we're into a full-scale indoctrination, okay? We're gonna make sure, and it's true for all of us, that the next generation at least gets to hear the truth. And so one of the challenges I'd give you, Andrew, and our first CPAC in America was before I was born, so or maybe shortly after I was born, 50 plus years of doing these CPACs, is I think a challenge I'd give each one of you, and this was not my idea, I talked to several of you out there about this, not only bring 2 or 3 more of your friends with you next year, but bring the kids with you. Because that's what it's all about in the end, is making sure the kids save the country.
Yeah.
So that's my challenge.
Yeah. We got to meet the challenge. Yeah. And probably the only other thing I've learned was that invite someone who's potentially going to get banned, right? Because it's like the gift that keeps on giving, right?
And taking.
So,
this is all on your tab, you know that, right?
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Raheem needs a stool, not for his numerous gin and tonics, but
this is mine.
he's got a sore foot from kicking protesters down the street. So
well, the knuckleheads, as you call them, I just want to make something clear. And I admit to being a little bit low energy yesterday. I'd just come off a plane, so sort of clutching onto the podium for dear life. I feel a little bit better now. I want to say about these knuckleheads, Christina Keneally tries to ban me because she's worried I'll incite something, incite violence. Who incited the violence? And I'm deadly serious about this, and I hope there are still some journalists left in the room. You need to write this up. Christina Keneally incited violence today.
Yeah.
She incited people to assault conference goers here. I didn't hear it. I heard there were send her back chants yesterday, and we want to distance ourselves from that, obviously. But if somebody's inciting violence, they should feel the repercussions of that. Right. She is responsible for that. Who is going to hold her accountable for this? She needs to answer for the fact that there was somebody assaulted because of what she has said about these conference goers today. And I'm not going to let that go.
That's good. Good. I'm for it.
Good.
And we know this in America, and obviously you know it here too, which is the whole deal of Antifa and these groups, which by the way are well-funded, they're well-organized, that's right. It's like Harry Potter, we dare not mention his name, but we know what's going on, and their whole deal is to intimidate you to not come to something like this and to not learn. And I'm hoping, and I feel pretty confident, that you're going to do just the opposite. And you're going to get even more engaged. And you're going to make sure you come back, like we said, in even greater numbers. And this is the whole battle. It's literally the battle for civilization. That's what we're dealing with. That sounds awfully stark, but it's really what it is.
It's true.
It's true. So, Matt, so next year, you'll be back, right?
I'll be back.
Okay, Raheem? We're gonna
Well, I don't
Does
know.
anyone want Raheem back next year?
It's not up to Raheem.
If the people demand it. Yeah, well, exactly. Well, again, I brought her up here again today. It depends if you have a government that will allow me in at this point next year. And I sort of half joke in saying that, but let's say that these guys somehow do get in. They will. She will be the Home Affairs Minister.
You would have been done.
And I would have been done if that election had gone a different way. We'll video conference me in. Well, that's even better because then my head can be 10 foot tall. It's right there.
You do it in summer. All right, so we're here to make a couple of announcements and then we're going to throw it open to you. So the first thing I'll announce is that we will definitely 100% be back here in Sydney in 1 year's time, same time. Woo. And I hope to see every one of you here with 2 of your friends and your children. Will you do that for us? Thank you. And then Raheem will come.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So, Matt, should we ask the crowd to maybe... I'm sure you've got lots of questions for these guys, perhaps, or questions about anything. We're happy to take questions on anything.
Will Prime Minister Farage be coming?
Actually, it's not funny. It actually could happen.
Yeah.
Well, we say in America, from your mouth to God's ears.
Mr. Schlapp. Mr. Soros, is he behind all these troubles we're having in the world?
Of course.
Can we blame him? And who else?
Can we what him?
Can we blame him and who else?
Oh, yeah, we can blame him. And look, I say the thing about not mentioning his name to Judy down here, but no, I think actually we have to mention their names, and we have to talk about them, and we have to understand what we face, and we have to understand how serious it is. So obviously I'm an American, and our experience is that for a couple of decades, we've been told that it's all about the kids, and if we spend a lot of money on education, we'll have like the greatest kids in the world, and they'll be so smart, and they'll be able to run circles around everyone, and we've spent all of our treasure on our education system. Really, it's the thing we spend the most money on. We've lavished money in our education system, and we have a lot of great kids that have come out of that system, but by and large, we've allowed the left to take a hold of that whole process to make us feel bad that we don't even spend more. And at the end of the day, the kids of today that are coming out of our education system are the victims of a relentless propaganda machine. And they're not happier because of it. And my country is weaker because of it. The only good thing about the whole thing is that I have great confidence in the fact that a lot of these 14 and 15 and 16-year-old American kids know exactly what's happening. They're smart enough to push back. And I think that they're starting to realize that what is being fed them is a pile of, help me out here, Raheem. Hooey. A pile of hooey. So, yes, we can blame them and we should call them out and we should fight them.
So I'm just going to add one little comment to that. I mentioned earlier, bring 2 friends and bring your children. I just want to make the point that I pulled my own children out of school, and they are here at the back of the crowd there.
All
Sasha
right.
and Bella, stand up, darlings. Stand up.
Now, do we break into the children are our future here?
Children are our future. And I did that because I wanted to hear different ideas.
That's great.
Ideas that they do not hear in the education system, the nationalised curriculum that we operate under now. Yeah.
I want to add something on the Soros point, if I might. Number one, the question contained also the sub-question, who else? Who else? The Ford Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Tom Steyer. There are all these people. Soros ain't the only one. He's the big one, but he ain't the only one. And there are actually others out there and other groups out there who need sunlight is the greatest disinfectant, right? And who need sunlight shone on them in their activities to show the world who they are and what they're doing. Because, thank you. But listen, the corporate world and I almost said corporate America, but it's all around the world, right? The corporate world is now woke, right? It's super, super woke with Gillette and Nike and all of these guys. These big corporate executives are making these decisions to pump the most egregious messages out there. And again, to come back to the children point, to the people who are most vulnerable to receiving that messaging, right? Younger people. And so we need to aim widely, as well as showing that Soros is a problem with this. And let me tell you something personally about Soros. Because for me, he's not just some amorphous, Hungarian-American blob. He actually took a direct impact on my life. In 1992, when he shorted the pound, in what a lot of people will remember as Black Wednesday, my father was an entrepreneur. He owned 3 fast food restaurants in West London. He was heavily leveraged during that time. And Soros shorted the pound. We lost everything. Overnight, we lost absolutely everything. And think about this. My father, he was at the time, young, immigrant entrepreneur, the types of people that Soros pretends that he wants to support, but in order to make a quick billion pounds of shorting the British pound, he put my family into bankruptcy, right? So for me, Mr. Soros, it's personal.
Okay, how are the 3 great democracies of Australia, United States and the United Kingdom going to provide leadership by working together to deliver conservatism to the rest of the world?
Well, I'm going to maybe take a crack at that, which is in America, I think a lot of conservatives became forlorn that their political leaders constantly were promising to do a whole series of things, and they were making very little progress. And I often say that, I'm not a very good handyman, but sometimes I'm squatting down trying to fix something, and the tools are all around me, and I'm not having any luck fixing it. And then I kind of feel my hand get around the hammer. We needed our hammer. We found our hammer in Donald Trump. We needed a blunt instrument to send a message and make it stop. And then I wondered, well, the hammer can break things, and he's good at that. But is it just about breaking it, or is it about breaking it and reforming it into something that's even better? And what I'm really optimistic about is not only were we able to grab the hammer, but all these other tools are working in a bit of an orchestra to really change our politics. And I'm hopeful that in these other great democracies, that similar things are happening, and only happening because people like you are demanding that it happen.
I'd make the comment that the greatest thing we can do to lead is to create market economies where the natural rights of freedom and liberty and the right to earn $1 without excessive taxation, those principles become a beacon and a shining light. And the trouble is, we're inevitably drifting more towards the left, in my opinion, more towards more authoritarian government and bigger government. And the question is, where are the shining lights? And the reality is they're all over the place. Some South American countries have very little taxation, have booming economies. The ex-Eastern Bloc countries like the Ukraine and Lithuania and many other, the low flat taxes, Georgia, flat tax regime and growing economies and rising wage. So there's leadership all over the globe. We have a role to play, but we should also not forget that there are others out there that are doing fantastic things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. In the middle.
I think
Sorry.
this guy's the mic.
Hi there. Andrew, Matt, thank you very much for organising CPAC Australia. Raheem, you're a bit hesitant about coming out next year, but what I'd like to do is ask the audience to give out a traditional Aussie chant, if they would, to encourage Raheem. And also for the other overseas speakers. So, no. We'll just do, if everyone's happy to do it, just say yes, Aussie, 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 and I'll lead it off. So, ready? Aussie, Aussie, Aussie. Aussie, Aussie, Aussie. 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 Aussie, Aussie, Aussie. Thank you.
Right. You've got me.
Come.
Got me. Great question.
So this is to the panel at large. So some of us are going to go back to very left-leaning Marxist universities, and we re-enter the trenches, we re-enter the fray. Now, one of the things that often undermines the legitimacy of conservative or libertarian organisations on uni campuses is that generally there's a female leadership deficit. Now, I've been involved in some election campaigns on university campuses where the left will utilise their superior female numbers, have women stationed close to the polls, and the moment you get close, they say, "Stop, as a woman, you're intimidating me," and of course you can't do anything but simply walk away. So my question is, in terms of conservative leaders, in terms of libertarians, because there are some here of course, when we go back to our universities, and this is more at the young, should we be looking to foster leadership amongst groups that aren't traditionally as well represented within our ranks, as for example women, or does that lead us into the trap of identity politics, and do we then become what we despise? But I suppose, how do we address that deficit without becoming what we do despise? And do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, thank God there's no more genders, so there's really not a problem we have to worry about.
Yeah.
Yeah, if somebody stops you and says, as a woman, you're intimidating me, you say, well, as a woman, I don't want to intimidate you.
Yeah. I mean, the university campuses are they're the modern day battleground, really, for the future. And the left has taken over many of the campuses, but there's a backlash. There's a rising sort of rejection of that. Perhaps I don't know whether you're recently at uni or you're at uni now, but perhaps you're part of that. And there are people around, like Rene Gorman and the IPA are great campus warriors now, and they're gathering up forces, and it's a fight, and we've got to support them. We don't need token women, of course not.
Well, we don't need token anything, is the point, right? But here's another point that a lot of people feel nervous about making, and I don't, because I genuinely feel like I wasted 3 years at university. Firstly and foremost, you think very hard about going to or sending your children to university nowadays. There is a massive, massive argument to be made that as long as we keep propping up these institutions, the longer they keep corrupting our societies. There are other things that we can do than send our children to study an ology somewhere and come out with a buzz cut flying an LGBT flag, right? Because that's what's being taught, frankly. So that's the first point to think about universities. Now, I appreciate you're already at university, and I'm not encouraging you to drop out of university. There's something else here. I never got into the political fray at university. I thought to myself at the time, why would I fight other idiots? I classed myself as an idiot at that point as well. But why would I, just butt heads with these people? Why wouldn't I go and learn something in my spare time, or have a job in my spare time, or help my community in my spare time? The fact is, and I imagine somebody might feel differently on this stage, and I hope you do, because there's an argument to be had about this, and I like arguments. It's a time suck. It's a time waste. You will emotionally drain yourself. You will make friends and lose friends and make friends and lose friends. Stop it. Stop wasting your time. You're not going to convert universities to being conservative bastions. You're just not going to do it. Lead by example. Go out into your community and do something. Don't worry about what's going on with your local Democrat Socialist of America chapter or Australia chapter or whatever it is on your university campus. So much time and effort is being poured in to have a couple of people with some change my mind signs on university campuses. I think it's a waste of time. I really do. I think you're not going to change those people's minds. Just let them have their little protests.
The only thing I would say specifically on this, which is I find that when I go up to folks in America and say, hey, why don't you come and get involved in CPAC, this great movement? And they're like, oh, well, I've never made the cut. I didn't get the invite. I'm not part of the club. And you'd be surprised how many people think that way. Like, you all are here, but how many other people thought, well, I don't know if do I qualify to get to go? So I just say, you actually should. It's not really about changing the university, right? It's about saving your country. So you actually should engage folks. You should bring them into what you're trying to get done, and you should do it on a regular basis. So I think half of it, especially is true with women, as the father of 5 daughters, by the way, 5 daughters. You'd be surprised how many times they're just being a little bit shy about doing something they ought to feel very comfortable in doing. So I'd say go for it, and tell them to join the cause.
Thank you very much. You're all leaders in the conservative, libertarian and nationalist movements across the Anglosphere. So you've got a bunch of activists in front of you now, and I'm wondering if you would impart to us what you think are the 2 or 3 things that everyone in this room should go away from here and do for the movement.
I'll take that. George Christensen, there's one thing you can all do if you're activists, and that's go to the campaign boot camp tomorrow. We have the Leadership Institute over from the US. These are the people that train, Republican grassroots activists.
Yep.
These are experts. And I don't know whether you've noticed, but the right here doesn't campaign really well, Let's face it, it's crap, right? So the number one thing you can do is go to the campaign boot camp tomorrow. You'll tell them the number 2 thing to do.
3 things, there's a lot. But I would say the first thing, back to what this young man asked over here, is people don't know where to go to get the truth anymore. A lot of people who are right-leaning know that the media lies, but there's a lot of other people that just know there's something that's not right. And so people are trying to figure out where the place is to go to get facts. And so whether, Andrew, that's your group or places help people understand that, where they can go to get the facts. Be someone that can actually help them understand things. And I bring up something else, but go ahead and people say these social media companies are terrible, and they're actually much worse than that. But what's your choice? Like, not to engage? That's a bad choice. So go ahead and engage. Engage folks. Everyone's got their own way of doing it. Some people will be more aggressive and assertive. The president chooses to be more kind of like high-minded and above the fray. But you can choose it any way you want, right? But I would get engaged in that context. I think it makes a big difference. Raheem almost laughed. I almost got you to laugh. That was.
I didn't know whether you were looking at me and saying "don't laugh" or whether you were giving me permission. I'm going to be a little bit Marianne Williamson right now with my answer. My answer is live well, show you're living well, and I'll tell you why I say that. More than anything, more than the newspapers, more than magazines, more than television, more than radio, people base their voting preference on what their neighbors are doing. And if their neighbors are seen to be doing better than them, have a big family, nice car in the driveway, bigger house, everything's painted, everything's swept, all of that kind of stuff, then they look to you as an example of what to do and then how to vote. And I'm not saying don't engage at all, that wasn't my message. I'm saying target your engagement and engage in your community, certainly. And if you're living well, and I know it's a really weird answer like that, it certainly doesn't really,
Marianne Williamson is really serious.
we got to love and all that, right? But no, there have been studies into this, that actually people look to their neighbors and they look at if you're happy. And if you're happy, they want to follow in your footsteps. So that's something I think a lot of us forget to do in our sort of curmudgeonly and contrarian mannerisms from time to time, and I'm guilty of it also. You ask my neighbors, but that actually the studies bear out that it has a massive, massive impact.
Andrew,
here's trouble.
I want to just apologize in advance if what I'm going to say or ask is extremely rude, because I'm unfamiliar with some of the niceties of Australian culture. But you were asked what people could do, and I will just tell you that having gotten to know Andrew over the last year and knowing the kind of work he does, he's doing extraordinary work. If you like what you have experienced and you want more of it, as my board chairman will say, you need fuel in the tank. So at the risk of sounding like a TV evangelist, if you like what Andrew's doing, he can only do it with support. So there's one thing that I would recommend that you do.
And the bucket will be coming around, and we prefer a silent donation.
Come on, Australian.
Britain will lead the way.
How do you answer that question? This is why we need to invite the left, because we need to ask them,
What do you think?
How do you answer it? What are you thinking? Yeah, it's...
Well, firstly, this is a massive recruiting tool for us as far as women are concerned.
Yeah.
Right? I mean...
Solve your problem.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Take more trannies onto campus. That's going to be in the papers.
When you have... I'm a tennis player, and when you have Billie Jean King and Martina Navratilova like leading the charge to say this is insane,
Yes.
that tells you where
Yes.
people are.
Yeah. But on a serious note, in terms of dealing with it, firstly, people need to know. Not a lot of people even know that that's what's going on. Secondly, I was reading this news article, I think it was in The Guardian the other day, and the headline was something like, football fans, as in soccer fans, football fans want nothing more than more LGBT players. I'm a Man United fan. I've never woken up in the morning and thought, you know what I need this season? But it's about showing people that this exists, because the culture war is real, the culture war is massive, and Andrew Breitbart said that politics was downstream from culture, right? But that's not entirely true. Actually, it's more like that culture is the riverbed and politics flows along the top of it. And at every step, at every juncture, especially when we make political gains, they try and switch the culture out from under us because they want the politics to change along with it. So the primary thing we can do in that regard is show women that they are losing out on opportunities now as a result of what the left is doing.
I just want to thank.
Right.
I just want to thank, obviously, and echo what others have said, that for everyone coming out here and supporting CPAC Australia. And I'd encourage everyone in the audience, if you pass one of the police officers outside, one of law enforcement, thank them for keeping the left wing heard today. It is cold today. But I just wanted to pick up on the note about potentially walking away from the university, etc. A lot of people take comfort because they say, well, you know, when these university students get into the workforce in the real world, they'll learn a thing or two. But most people don't realise they're already in the workforce, they're in the HR departments, they're in the public service, they're changing it from the inside. What advice would you have to people within the room who either work in the public service or might work within a company where they feel under threat for sharing conservative views or even libertarian views?
Well, let me just start there, because I've had some of those experiences, and the American experience is that there's not a more politically charged place with political correctness run amok than, as you said, the HR directors in most of our largest publicly held companies. I'm a Christian. If you're a person of faith, you're not going anywhere in a lot of these companies, because they're going to assume that you're a bigot and that you're a hater and all the slurs that get cast about. And I would say that because of this, there is a lot of people who are hurting because they have these wonderful God-given gifts. And because of this kind of polluted system that's being developed with the idea that there's only certain speech that's allowable and everyone's constantly offended and triggered. Did you see that thing in America where you can't clap and they're all going like this? I want to apologize on behalf of some of my fellow Americans. That was appalling. I watched that with one of my daughters, and I said, you know, if they start doing that in school, you are to call me immediately. But I think there are a lot of people who are hurting because they have great skills, they have great things they can get accomplished, and they are stuck in this rot. And so what I think we all have to do is, including ourselves, is quit having such a hissy fit over everything. And maybe as an individual, if we can just show them that it doesn't hurt us to allow somebody else to be the person they want to be and live the life they want to live, I think it's going to help our society a lot. And second of all, these are some really messed up people. Seriously messed up people. Please, don't allow them to be in charge of anything. And so you've got the training tomorrow and the rest of this, and making sure that the nonprofits are well funded, as Dan brought up, and everything else. Please do this. Because if we lose a few more decades of these deranged people running things, we're not going to be able to get it back.
Yeah, one more generation.
And thank you guys for bringing CPAC to Australia.
Can I just add something to that real quick so that I don't have to come back to it? Firstly, I think we should end public funding of universities in totality, right? I don't mean turn your back on them when I say that. I mean crush them for what they're doing. Privately funded universities only. If you want to take the debt on, you can.
Did you get a lot of bad grades, or what's? I mean, you got a little chip on your shoulder. I'm worried
I
about
got terrible grades.
You know,
I was at the pub most of the time. But the second point is also crush these corporations, right? We need to be pointing out time and time again the corporations that are persecuting people for their Christian faith, for instance, and promoting poor values, like Gillette, who had billions wiped off their value very recently, right? We are so easily resigned to being like, oh, we're losing, we're never going to win this. No, we showed very recently that we can wipe billions off a publicly traded company, and we will do it to every single one of them if we have to. And here's the trick. Identify conservative-run companies, identify small companies, Black Rifle Coffee Company, veteran-run companies, all of those things, and spend your money with them.
That's right.
Black Rifle Company's not in Australia yet, but yeah,
Well.
it should be, hopefully. So I wanted to, as I said, thanks for bringing CPAC here. It's overdue. And Matt, can you talk to Congressman Meadows and bring Hannity over for the next one? So.
I hope you said Hannity and not Kennedy, right? You said Hannity?
Yeah, you shared. That's me.
I'm not gonna-
No,
look.
with Kassam. He shared a video earlier. That was me getting the soy latte tipped on my head out the front.
Oh.
So I'm just going to preempt everyone in the room. I know Donald will be on the way to winning the next election next year, so he won't be able to come. But can you please drag Don Jr. and Tucker?
Well, I'm glad you have very small and easily reachable goals for us to try to reach. That's good.
Okay, 2 more questions.
I actually, by the way, I actually did, because in the conversation about the Keneally stuff, when Don Jr. tweeted about it, I actually did say to him and his team, you know, it would be great to have you here. And they were like, look, give us some fair notice next time. We'll think and try and all that kind of stuff. So there is a chance. There is a chance. But only if you bring 2 friends and your children.
That's right.
I just want to bring to everyone's attention, and particularly for the panel, that in Australia and England, I don't know too much about America's situation with it because they went before us with it, is in an aged care crisis right now. We have a Royal Commission on in this country. England's about to have their first one on it as they're about to hit the precipice of the same issues we're facing here. There is a centralisation of a lot of things going on around the ageing populations within our countries, and one of the most concerning things is that as they get older, they're ripping their finances, their wealth and their retirement from them. But they're creating an industry that is not going to be maintained by the multiple generations of Australian citizens. It's probably the same with England. It'll be filled with more immigrants, more workers, more people that can be convinced to go to that side of the line.
What's the question, Drew?
What do we do to bring our Australian conservative people up higher to understand we're losing connection with our elderly and what they have built for us in the conservative space? And the other side is infiltrating our children, and they're turning them into mindless numbnuts and forcing them into spaces where they're becoming weak and they're committing suicide at unbelievable rates. And we need to do something to stop it.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right.
We agree.
And in England, we recently had appointed a minister for loneliness. Isn't that sad? That we have a loneliness crisis with elderly people not being looked after
And in America,
adequately.
The Democrats are trying very hard to nominate either Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders to make people who are 80 plus feel like they're still in the game. So, you know.
Do you know, the answer is, honestly, for all of us, is have more kids. That is one of the major answers. And to have more kids, we need policies that encourage people to have more kids and that makes it affordable for people to have more kids. I mean, the Hungarians are magnificent at this. The Hungarians, if you have 3 or 4 children in your family now, there's no tax on a family vehicle. The mother doesn't pay any tax for the rest of her life on any earnings. They have done something absolutely extraordinary in Hungary. And their child rate has gone from 1.8 to 2.1 in 3 years, and it's going up and up and up. And that's what we need to do in the rest of the Western world.
And
It is for married couples. That's you, but
Yeah, well, they should be getting married.
It's for married couples only, that policy. I was in Verona a few months ago, and that policy is specifically for proper nuclear family.
Yes. Right. People should be getting married. Absolutely.
But the point is, there are leading lights, right? Someone over here said, what are the leading lights in Australia, America, and England? You know what? We might be done. We may not be the leading lights, and Hungary and some of these other countries are doing great things. To me, Drew, I reckon Steve Baxter said it, right? The government stuffed up the NBN. The government stuffs up everything it touches, right? The government is the problem. It's all over aged care. It's got all these stupid policies around superannuation. They'll be tackling that soon enough. They don't let people work and dip into their retirement savings. I mean, the government's stuffing that up.
We got one more.
Okay, last question, everybody. Last question.
Hi. We live in an unprecedented grid of control. Google, Facebook, backbone internet services don't allow everybody to have an equal voice in the public space anymore. Should Conservatives have something more to say about how we deal with these organisations?
Well, I will say, I'll refer to Harriet that yelled out property rights, right? I hate it, okay? But they are privately owned companies. They own that infrastructure. They're giving us substantially a free service. You know what? If we don't like it, and we shouldn't like it, we should go, right? They'll only listen if you go.
Okay. Respectfully disagree in a massive, massive way. Okay?
Finally!
Standard Oil, all these monopolies, that Reagan did it as well, break them up. They are monopolies. Break them up. They are abusing your data. They are abusing your rights. They're abusing their position in the marketplace. There is no competitor, and any competitors that come along, they squash them down and buy them out and subsume them into Google or Facebook or whatever. And when Facebook owns 75% of family and friend interactions that go on in the digital space all around the world, that's a monopoly. Break them up.
Let me give this a go, because I probably would occupy space between the two of you. I think there's all kinds of things that I think these companies are doing that there are serious legal questions on. I come from a country where we just spent 2 years and millions of dollars investigating whether or not there was collusion between the Trump campaign and Vladimir Putin. And by the way, the Democrats have started a new round of investigations, because they believe, like golf, you should get as many chances to get that little ball down the fairway, right? That's how I play golf too, so I don't blame them. But the fact is this, what's really going on, and the collusion that's actually going on, is the collusion between the left-wing Democrats in my country and these corporations, and these massive social media corporations. In America, it's illegal to use corporate resources to have any role in federal campaigns. Yep. That is the illegality that we have to start cracking down on. Second of all, you don't realize, you said 75% of familiar, which sounds interesting, but relations, that they're tracking that. They have your photos and everything else. You don't know the extent to which they're tracking it. Yeah. That is really frightening. They know what floor you're on in the building that you occupy right now. Yep. They know what windows you're looking at. When you get all those ads to buy things that mysteriously they know that you were looking at,
or talking
not
about.
Even just online with your searches, but everywhere else, I'm okay with the idea that technology gives us the insights in so many ways. But I believe you own your information about you. I believe you own your pictures. And if you want to give them away and you want to rent them to these companies, that should be your choice. So if I ever had my choice as a legislator in America, I would say everybody in America now that we know what these companies are, it's their private property rights. If they want to get into a contract with Google for them to have it, then they get paid to have it. And I think that would change a lot of these problems.
I still think a break them up chant.
It's a much more effective.
Break them up. Break them up.
Raheem the populist. All right, so that brings us to the conclusion of day 2. We have the campaign boot camp tomorrow, and we are having the dinner tonight, but I know many of you aren't coming to the dinner. I want to thank you on behalf of Matt and the American Conservative Union. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, our hearts, for attending. It's tremendous.
You didn't finish the gin.